Hello, and welcome to the Ninox Learning Channel. My name is Andy. I'm a Ninox programmer and trainer. And in this class, we're going to continue our discussion of viewing information and data in our Ninox database solutions. Now, in previous classes, we've looked at a number of different views, the Gantt chart, cards, and Kanbans. We've looked at a number of different ways to look at the information and the content inside of our Ninox applications. But in this class, we're going to look at some built-in features, some very easy to use but powerful functions that enable us to create not only databases that capture and store information, but databases that present and calculate and provide us with very helpful information, and in some cases, even business intelligence that we can use to make better decisions faster and to do everything from running our businesses to just keeping track of what's going on at home and around us. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, we have created a sample database here called Working with Views, and we have a couple of basic tables: employees, inventory, invoices, and projects. This database is available in the Nioxus member portal. If you go to Nioxus, Nioxus.com, click on Login. Go ahead and log into the database with your password and ID, and you can get these for free on the home page. And click on Templates. When you go into the Templates section, at the very top, you'll see a template called Viewing Data and Information. You can go ahead and download that template for free and follow along as we look at these various and powerful viewing tools. So, let's start by just looking at a very basic view. And we're going to begin with a simple list. Now, we remember that to create a view, we click on this plus button, which will always be immediately to the right of the last view on your screen. And by that I mean here we see 4 views. Each of these tabs is a view, and the last tab is the tab on the far right. To the right of that is the plus sign. Click the plus sign, and the new view window will drop into view. Select Table, Form, Gantt chart, Cards, Kanban, or any of the graphics, and you can create a new view using this technique. Now, we've talked about building new views in the past, so let's get into some of the features and some of these hidden functions that are available within our views. The first thing that I want you to remember is every column heading in a listing view, or what we would call the table view. Every column heading in a table view is live. That means you can click on it, and additional features and functions will immediately be presented that you can use to change the way this view of data is presented. For example, if we wanted to see this view, but we wanted to see it in ascending order by group, with group A at the top and group E at the bottom, we simply could click on the group column heading and select ascending. There's A at the top, followed by B, C, and D, and of course E at the bottom. If we wanted to see this not in group order, but by category, and not in ascending but descending order, with category 4 at the top and category 1 at the bottom, very simple. Select descending, and our presentation order or sequence will automatically change from ascending by group to descending by category. It's important to remember that you can only have one column be the column that defines presentation order. If we're looking at something in order by group, we can't also be looking at it in order by category. It's one or the other. And this caret symbol, this upward pointing arrowhead, will always appear on the right side of the column that is being used as the sequencing or listing order field. We could do this just as easily with our classifications, with classification 100 at the top, or in descending order, classification 300 at the top, class 100 at the bottom. But there's always one column that serves to define how the information or data in the listing is presented in either ascending, small to large, A to Z, or descending, large to small, Z to A, 9 to 0 order. Let's look at a different way to affect the view, and that is using something that we call grouping. However, we can use one column to group and a different column to set the order or sequence within the group. A group is a collection, a bundle, a subset of all of the records that have a single characteristic in common. For example, here we have all of our records, and there are, looks to be about 30 or 40 of them, close to 50 records. And all of those 50 records have a category, and it's only category 1, 2, 3, or 4, which means there are certain records that have category 1 as a common field, or category 2, 3, or 4. So when we say we want to group by category, what we're saying is we want to see a collection of all of the records that are of the same category. I will click on the category heading or the category column label and click on grouped. And now you see that it has put in these separators. Look to the far left, and in each separator there is this triangle. When the triangle is pointing down, the group is being detailed. If you click the downward pointing triangle, it closes the group and shows you the group in summary. Here are all of the records in category 1. I can close category 1 and change my mind and look at category 3. I can look at all of the categories by clicking on all of the triangles until they point down. Or if you are using the application, if you're not in the cloud method, you can hold down the command key and press the letter K. This will open all of the grouping categories. And if you hold down the command key and the shift key and press the letter K, it'll close them all back up again. Now that K, shift K, open and close utility is only available in the desktop application on the Mac system. If you're in the cloud, that's not an available option. But if you're working locally on your machine, that's a quick and easy way to open and close all of your groups, as opposed to going through and opening or closing them one at a time. Now, the thing that I also want you to notice here is by grouping, we also have set a display order. So what I can do is I can group by one field and then set the display order by a different field. For example, I'm going to group by category, but show the records within each group in descending order by classification. Open up each category. The highest class, class 300, is at the top. Class 100 is at the bottom. And similarly, all of the groups are following this pattern. And I'll use Command-Shift-K to close them up again. So this is a very easy way to set the sequencing or the order of the data, of the information and records that appear in your table or listing views. One other thing that I'd like to recommend, it's not required, but best practices dictate that if you are going to group records by a specific field, in order to create an intuitive and easy to understand user interface, we always recommend that the field you use to group be the first field when looking at the presentation from left to right. Now, some of you may be asking, What did he just do and how did he do it? You saw me grab a column, in this case the category column, and move it to a new position horizontally within the view. For example, I have category now on the far left, classification on the far right. If I wanted group to follow category and class to follow group when reading left to right, group goes there, class goes there, and we're done. By clicking and holding any column heading in a table or listing view, you can drag that column to any new position. And you know you've got it in a new position. For example, I'm going to drag item number all the way over to now be just to the right of category, the second column. I click and hold. I drag to the left 1, 2 columns. Now you'll notice that what was previously the second column, the classification column, has now popped over to the right to take its position as the third column. Now I can let go of the mouse and the item number column is the second column in the listing when viewing it horizontally left to right. Be careful you don't grab one of the view names and try and drag that left and right. That doesn't work. You want to make sure you're grabbing the column heading, which is just below the view name row, and drag those columns to your heart's content. Now, everything I just did is great, but if I want it to stick, if I want it to be like this from now on, I need to make sure that something very important gets done before I start making the changes. And that is, I need to be in administrative mode. Remember to grab the red wrench, the official Ninox maintenance mode or administrative mode wrench. We click on the wrench in the far top right-hand corner until it glows red. Now, the changes that we make, either by dragging and dropping columns or changing the ascending or descending order, or even changing the grouping mechanism, these changes will now be permanent, or they will last at least until the next set of changes is made. If the wrench in the top right-hand corner does not glow red, you are not in administrative mode. And while you can continue to make these changes will not be saved. So if I go off and look at a different view and come back to this one, all the changes I just made are now gone because I didn't make them in administrative mode, so they weren't saved to be a permanent part of my database solution. Let's look at a couple of other things we can do under the heading of statistics. There are some things that we want to know about the data in our view. For example, we might want to know how many records are there by classification. We call this subtotaling. How many records are there in the view, and how many records are there in each classification, each group that is being used to present the view? Very simple. Let's just pick any record. Or any field. Let's pick the group field, and let's select count. Again, click on the column heading and click on count. We can see at the very bottom, at the bottom of the screen, at the bottom of that column, we're now being told there are 37 records in this view in total. But more specifically, there are 15 records in classification 100, 12 records in classification 200, and 10 records in classification 300. What we can do is we can calculate or apply different statistics to different columns. Let's go over to our invoice table and take a look at how to calculate those statistics. Again, looking at a listing, or what we call a table view of all of the invoices, we have some fields here that we did not have in the previous example, notably numeric, in this case US currency dollar fields, and date fields, and then plain number fields. When we click on the column headings for those special fields, we have some new and special features available. For example, I might want to know the average of all of my product sales. I click on product sales, I select average, and at the bottom, let's turn that back on, I see that $790.05 is the average of all of the records, all of the invoices in this listing. How many invoices are there? Well, that count is being applied at the salesperson column, and there are 390 records. Those 390 records average $790.05 per invoice for product sales. What's the average service fee? Just a few pennies short of $800. What's my average warranty or miscellaneous? Just a few pennies short of $500. And what are the total sales of all of my invoices? Well, it looks like a number. We should be able to add that up. Keep in mind that the features and functions, the way we can manipulate a column in our listing view, depends on the type of data. Here we see text data. So we have the ability to count, concatenate, or define the first and last record in this column of textual values. In numeric values, we have some additional features, some additional statistical capabilities like counting, summing, or adding up, taking the average. In addition to first, last, and concatenation, we also have min and max. So why is it that this column, this invoice total column, is not showing me the ability to summarize or average the invoice total? Well, I'll give you a clue. Notice that all numeric values, item number, product sales, service fees, and warranty and miscellaneous, these are all numeric values and they're all displayed right justified. Notice the values that appear in the invoice. They are numbers, but they're left justified. Because we chose to color code certain invoices, we had to change this presentation of content to be the text version of the number. So what we're actually seeing in this invoice column are text values, and text cannot be added or averaged. It can be counted, as we see here. It can be counted, concatenated, or you can see the first to the last. And of course you can group it or put it into ascending or descending order. But only numeric columns, numeric data, can be summed, averaged, or have it the minimum value or the maximum value presented. What is the highest value invoice in terms of product sales? Let's click on product sales and click on max. And we can see at the bottom that it is a single invoice containing $28,574 in product sales. Now keep in mind, presenting the min or the max does not necessarily identify the record. It only identifies the value. If we want to see the highest priced invoice in terms of product sales at the top, then we change into descending order. And there's that $28,574 invoice, invoice number 93456 to Prime Intelligence. And here at the bottom of the column, we see that is the value of the one invoice that has the highest or maximum product sales. Which invoice has the lowest value for warranty or miscellaneous? Click on warranty and miscellaneous, select min. It's $100. If you want to see that invoice, you can put this column and this entire view in ascending order, and there's that single invoice at $100, which is, of course, the lowest value in this column. But again, how do we see the total of all of the invoices for all of the product, service, and warranty items we sold? We can't use this field because it is being transformed into a text field. Click on any field in the listing, any column heading for any field in the listing, and I'll click on invoice number. And click on the button that says Show Column, the blue button in the bottom right-hand corner of the function window that just popped up. And this will reveal to you all of the fields and all of the formulas that are not already being displayed on the view. And here we have a formula for total invoice. The formula is obviously product sales plus service fees plus warranty and miscellaneous. This formula is the text version of the total invoice field. Let's go ahead and place total invoice in the view. Let's now create the sum, or calculate the sum total of all of these invoices, and we can see that that amount is $814,941. The total right here at the bottom. Now, this total is getting cut off a little bit. We can see that that final zero to the right of the decimal point is not fully visible. How to make a column wider or narrower? Simply take your cursor and place it right between two columns, with the column whose width you want to change on the left. For example, if I want to change the width of the customer type column, I place my cursor on the right-hand margin, right between customer type and salesperson, until my cursor changes from an arrow pointer to two arrows pointing left and right. I click and hold, and I now drag right or left to change the width of this column. So since it's this column, the total invoice column, that's being cut off, I'll place my cursor to the right of total invoice until it changes into a left-right pointing arrow, click and hold, and drag ever so slightly to the right to fully reveal all of the digits in the sum total of this column. And while we're at it, customer name's a little wider than it needs to be, so is invoice number. All of these fields are pretty wide, and the reason you might want to skinny these columns up is depending on how big a screen you have, you may want to make sure each column is taking up the minimum amount of space, its minimum width, because this will allow you to get the maximum number of columns onto your view based on the size and width of your screen. Let's continue. We know that text columns or text fields can be set to ascending or descending or grouped. They can be counted, concatenated, or we can determine the first to the last. And numeric fields like product sales or total invoice, they can be statistically manipulated to include a count or a sum, an average, the min or the max. But there's one more type of field that we also can work with, and that is the date field. There's one thing we can do with a date that we can't do with any other type of field. Specifically, what we can do is we can filter a range on dates. Now, we've talked for these last few moments about setting the sequence, low to high, high to low, grouped or bundled by a commonality in one field. We've talked about totals and averages and counts that we can calculate and present at the bottom of each column. But that is just affecting what we see on the screen. That is just affecting the order in which everything is presented, or the totals of everything that is being presented. If we don't want to see everything, we can use a filter. Let me show you what I mean. Remember a moment ago when we were setting the order of those inventory records by class, by category? Well, we can do that here. For example, what if I want to see all invoices sorted by salesperson? Click on salesperson, alphabetically A to Z is ascending order. There we go. But what if I only want to see Larry Brooks invoices. I don't want to see any other salesperson but Larry Brooks. Now I need a filter. I click on salesperson, I click on filter, and I type L. Brooks. I hit the enter key, and now we're not seeing all 350 records. We're only seeing the 71 records that are attributed to the salesperson, L. Brooks. The word salesperson is being cut off a little bit. Let's grab that column, drag it off to the right, just a few characters. Remember that total, that invoice total that we had at the bottom of this column? Note how it has changed. It's now down to $123,040. That's not the total sales for the company. That's the total sales for Mr. Brooks. Using filters allows us to specify not the order in which things are presented, but the criteria for something to be presented. Here we have defined L. Brooks as the string of characters that must be in the salesperson field to qualify to be presented in this view. If I only wanted to see small business customer invoices, I could go to customer type, I could go to filter, and I could just type on SMALL, the word small. And that is enough to differentiate small business from everyone else. Now, this happens to be all invoices to small businesses that were sold by Larry Brooks. Take the filter off of this column, the salesperson column, by clicking the X to the right of the filter. And now we have all of our salespeople and all of the invoices that all of the salespeople produced, but only to small business clients. Using these filters is a great way to see how one group is performing compared to another. You might want to see all of our outstanding invoices versus invoices that have been paid. We might want to see all invoices for a particular salesperson. We might want to see all invoices for customers in a particular state or region of the country or part of the world. Filters will do that for us. And to create a filter, simply click on the column that you want to use as the filtering criteria, go to the filter field, and type in the minimum that you need to specify a filter. For example, if I only want to see Alan Smith records, all I have to do is type A.S. That's enough to differentiate Alan Smith from all of the other salespeople. Now, a common mistake people make is they will look at a listing or a table view such as this and only see 19 records and incorrectly think they're looking at the entire table. Always look for the filter icon to the right of any column that is being filtered. And unlike the order, ascending or descending, where only one column can serve to set the presentation sequence or order, filters can be applied on multiple columns. And those columns can still be moved any way you like. Keep in mind one thing though, I'm not in administrative mode, which means all of these changes, if I go look at a couple of other views and decide to come back to this view, all my changes are gone because I didn't save the changes. You must be in administrative mode when you make these changes, and the way this looks when you exit administrative mode is the way it's always going to look. Now, I want to show you one other thing that's not so much this kind of view, but it is important for understanding how we see data at a critical moment in the operation of our database. Let's go in and create a new invoice, and let's add an item that we want to sell. We'll give this an invoice number, and the invoice date can be today. And then we're going to click on this reference field to pop up a list of all of our inventory items, and then select the item that we're selling on this invoice. And let's say we're selling this particular poncho. The important thing that I want to point out here is how the information is presented or viewed in the pop-up. Let's see it again. I'm going to click the blank reference field to pop up this listing. Now, there's a couple of things wrong with this listing. First of all, we've got the same field appearing twice, the image field. We don't need that twice. Let's get rid of one of them. And at this point, really all I need is the item number on the left, and let's go ahead and stretch out that column. I'm going to add the item description by clicking on this column, selecting Show Column, and selecting Item Description. And I'm going to make that nice and wide. And then I want to have the thumbnail image. Don't need to see the group, so I'll hide it. Category, classification, don't need any of that. And we'll go ahead and stretch these out so we've got plenty of room. None of these fields have to be scrunched up. And now I can select the poncho that I wish to sell on this invoice. Let's look at it one more time. I'm going to break the link or clear the reference field and click in the blank, or I could just as easily use the magnifying glass to pop up a list of all of my Well, now what happened here? We just made all those changes and all my changes are gone. That's right. I was not in administrative mode. Let's do it again. Let's select the wrench. Let's grab our maintenance or administrative mode wrench so it's glowing red. Now let's pop up the inventory. Now let's make those changes. Getting rid of some fields, changing the order and the width of the fields. We don't need group and we don't need class. We want the item description to be there, nice and wide. And then the image field, don't need the number field twice, get rid of that. There we go. Now watch what happens. Whether I select a record or click cancel, it doesn't matter. I'll click cancel. I did not select a record, but I did make changes in administrative mode to my database. I now am being given the option to save those changes or those modifications. I will click Save Changes and exit administrative mode. Let's see if it worked. Blank invoice, blank inventory field, click the field, and sure enough, that's what I want the pop-up to look like. Now, the pop-ups, the selection windows that appear when you click on an empty related field will always be columnar listings or rows of records in the table to which you're linked where you're looking up the data. So it's always going to be that table or listing view. And all of the things we know about listing views are here. Number fields can be counted, averaged, or summed up. Text fields can be set to go in ascending or descending order. For example, I might want all my items to appear alphabetically by item description. Before I make the change, let's go into administrative mode. Open up the field, make description the first column, click on description, make sure it's in ascending order, and there we go. Now it's alphabetical with bikinis at the top and underwear at the bottom. Click to select a record or cancel a record, save the change, and now whenever you go to look up an inventory item on this invoice, this is what you'll see. These are the 4 columns in this order left to right with your items top to bottom alphabetized by description. What I want you to remember is you can change the view in any relational pop-up, but your changes will only stick. They'll only be permanent if you grab your wrench to go into administrative mode or administration mode. So that's a special kind of view that lots of people use, that most databases take advantage of, the real ease with which you can relate one table to another. And people want to be able to make changes. Now you know how to make changes, but don't forget to grab that red wrench to make your changes in administrative mode so your changes will be made permanent. One more thing to show you before we wrap up our class for today. We've looked at how to group records. We've looked at how to set the order in ascending or descending. We've looked at different ways to calculate statistics, counting the number of records in a group or in an entire table, calculating the sums, the averages, the lowest or the highest, the min or max numeric values, or the first or last textual or text alphanumeric values. And of course, we can concatenate all of the values in a field into one. One more thing I want to show you for one special kind of field, and that is the date field, and it's a special filtering option. When you click on the column heading of a date field, you don't get one filtering option, you get two. So now you can select a date range. For example, if I want to see all invoices for the month of February in the year 2018, I can specify that date range. February 28th, 2018, and there are my 2 February invoices. Here's the total of my February invoices. The count, the average service fees, the maximum product sale in February, and the minimum warranty sale just in February. If I want to see all invoices beginning in February and running through the end of the year, I'm not required to specify an ending date. I'll simply say starting at February 1st and running till effectively the end of time. This takes me out to the rest of the year. And if I take off the from parameter, that will bring the January invoices back into view. So again, we can set filters for numeric values, for alphanumeric values, but also for date values. And when setting a filter for a date value, you can select a from date and optionally a to date. You can go the other way. You can leave the from date blank and specify an ending date. So filtering by date is particularly powerful because you have this from to, this beginning and ending range option. And that's really it for filters. And for sequencing, ascending, descending, grouping, or bundling, all of these features, all of these powerful functions are built right into the Ninox system. You don't have to program a single line of code. They're automatically created when you create your first table and every table, and they're easily accessed by simply going in and clicking on the column heading of any column in the table, or what we would call the multi-record or listing view option. That's viewing in Ninox, and that's it for this class. Thank you for joining me. I hope you learned something. I hope you had fun. And I really hope I'm going to see you in our next class when we're going to talk about drawing pictures or charting and graphing our Ninox data and information. Bye-bye, everybody. Thanks for joining me.